All right, hello, and welcome back to the Chase Thomas podcast presented by Blue Wire Pods, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. On today's show, I am joined by one of my old friends, special guest, and just brilliant college football and just writer in general, Ivan Maisel of On3's. Ivan, good evening, sir. How are you?
Chase, happy to be here. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. When are you going to break the Urban back to coaching rumor? When are you going
to... isn't that amazing? I mean, given his track record, when I say track record, people go, well, yeah, he wins a lot and they'll hire him. But everywhere he's gone, there's been a lot of eggs broken to make that omelet. I'll put it that way.
Would you be surprised if he gets another big job? In your heart of heart, would you be surprised?
I would not be surprised. No, that's just the way college football is. But I would be disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably, you can make the case, the second best college football coach of all time. Like, if you want to be third, fourth, I could get there. You're not there.
No, Lord.
Interesting.
No.
Okay.
Who
are you putting in front of him?
Well, if you go by winning percentage, there's a few. At least there's Rockne and Leahy. If you go by national championships, there's Saban, Bryant. If you go by longevity, there's a number, and I think that's important too. I mean, if you're looking at the whole package, Urban has been very good where he's been, but he's kind of like Leahy in the sense, and Leahy was the coach at Notre Dame from 1941 to 53, excluding a couple of years during the war, but he also had to retire at age 45 because of the stress. The stress of the job almost literally killed him. And Urban is kind of on that same pathway. So, but even if you say, okay, well, he's kind of like Leahy had a much better record and won more national championships.
I guess for me, it always just comes down to, like, not many coaches can say they can win at Bowling Green, they can win at Utah, they can win at Florida, they can win at Ohio State, where you can just drop that coach in any part of the country and they're like, I'll recruit it, I'll do whatever, I'll figure it out. I think a lot of coaches, and it's just really, really difficult. And some of them now, we don't even get to see them really bounce around the group of five or move up from FCS to group of five to Power Five. A lot of it is you're a coordinator or you go from the NFL. But, like, it seems like it's significant. The path that Urban took is not as common for a lot of coaches anymore.
No, and we're now in a phase where guys are getting jobs in their mid-30s, and which Urban did, but it was in the MAC, and we're now seeing guys get those jobs in Power Five schools, and that'll be a phase for a while until they decide, until the pendulum swings back to we need experience. So, but you make a good point about winning everywhere and winning early and winning late. He's never not won. That's true. But I think, to me, he hasn't been able to sustain it personally because of his health. And, Florida became a train wreck. In Ohio State, where there weren't so many NCAA issues, although there were a couple, but I don't know how. I mean, there's just a lot of baggage, so.
We'll see what happens, but it certainly seems like the wind is blowing in a return sooner rather than later on that front. But we shall see. What we also know, the greatest college football coach of all time that you're quite familiar with, Ivan, Nick Saban, locking in a contract extension to ruin my third Saturdays in October for the foreseeable future, where he will still be the head coach of Alabama. He kind of left the breadcrumbs a little bit. And I think we talked about Saban at length because you had a really good column. I guess this was over a year ago now on Saban and his longevity and what he's going to do. And it's not a surprise. We've seen a lot of legendary coaches like this. I mean, Joe Pa, and I wonder for him if he thinks about like what life was like for Bear Bryant right after he stepped down and was not coaching anymore. And I think you see this a little bit with Greg Popovich in San Antonio, where a lot of people from the outside, they ask, are like, why are you still doing this? Or Lee Corso, why are you still doing College Game Day? You don't have to do College Game Day anymore. I think these guys like staying busy, and Nick Saban likes winning. That's part of it. And if he wasn't winning, I'm sure this kind of toll and what he has to do to stay a winner would not be as fun, or he would probably reconsider. But he's got a great thing going, and that so much of his identity and his daily routine and everything else is tied to this that I don't think I'm surprised. And I don't blame the guy and guys like him for sticking around for as long as possible, because people like staying busy. We like doing stuff.
No, you're exactly right. He still loves to win. He still hates to lose. And his hatred of losing drives him to do what is necessary to win.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of guys, as they get older, the pain of losing just gets to them. And we've seen that with a number of people. A lot of guys just can't take the stress of the job.
Mm-hmm.
Bryant was much older than his years and really needed to have retired 2 or 3 years before he did. And clearly, obviously, was a very sick man by the time he did retire. So Saban's in good health. He doesn't, as the old joke goes, he doesn't get ulcers, he gives them. And and he's still energized by working with kids and by winning. So I think he's going to be there for a while. Whether he coaches until he's 79, which is when the contract, or 78, I guess the current contract runs out in 2030. So he'd be 78. Is he going to stay that long? Who knows? But he's going to be there a while.
I just think it's fascinating in terms of just the reinventing over and over again. And
Great
this
point.
year, I mean, for him to stay on top of certain things, where I don't even know if a lot of people realize that, like, oh, he has this churn. And the biggest difference, I was listening to somebody on an NFL show talking about Belichick, and the difference between Belichick and Saban is that Belichick is like recycling with his old guys. Like, he's going back to the well of his own guys. Saban, when he loses assistants, he goes all over the place. You never know where he's going to go. He might go Bill O'Brien. He's going to bring in Doug Marrone, a former successful NFL head coach and a successful coach at Syracuse in his own right. It doesn't work out with him being the offensive line coach last year. And he's like, all right, I'm just going to, like, you're out of here. And I'll just go get the Kentucky offensive line coach and we'll just bounce right back. I mean, I think those are the little things under the radar that I think the casual college football fan doesn't even realize, that, like, he integrates folks from all over the country and just gets them all on the same page, when I think that is significantly more difficult behind the scenes than I think anyone would believe. Is that fair?
Well, it's fair. And the one point I would add is that he does bring guys back, who left, and a couple of guys he's brought back twice. So, and they've come back, in the first half of Saban's head coaching career, assistants used to tell stories about how awful it was to work for Nick. Still not easy, but they come back because they realize, they're going to have everything at their disposal to be the best, to make the kids the best they can be. And that's a price they decide they're willing to pay to have those tools at their ready. So it's remarkable. I wish he would be a little more open in showing us and allowing us to talk to his assistants to see what it's like. But I guess that story will come out. Those stories will begin to come out someday.
Do you still guess that he winds up on, like, College Game Day or something after it's all said and done? Or the fact that he did push this contract to 2030, that when he's done, and he's going to Lake Burton, or is he Lake Burton? I think he was Lake Burton. And then we just never see Nick Saban again.
I would find it hard to believe he wouldn't have his hand in the game somehow. Does he want to, when he's however old he is, does he want to be the guy on game day? who knows? I mean, I know Lee Fitting, who has run college football production at ESPN for a long time, and Game Day specifically for a long time, and Nick have a very good relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that door will always be open. Well, I say always, is it something they would be interested in if he's 5 years older? Is it something he would be interested in if he's 5 years older? It's impossible to say, but he'd be good at it. He'd be really good at it.
I'm curious with how plugged in you are, Ivan. If you had to do like a broad strokes assessment of how happy college coaches are right now with all the changes across college football in a very short amount of time, and then the mega conferences and things like that, do you suspect or do you get the sense that they're happy that they're learning how to live in this world and that there are things being set up? Like, I think to Billy Napier, where he has more assistant coaches than actual players in that team photo, where maybe that's how to balance this life now, is that you just have to have so many stinking assistants that do all these little things because it's just too much, or you're going to have an 18-hour day, 20-hour day every day, all year round.
Well, they
Or
do
do
that
you
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but maybe focusing more on what you actually want to focus on and not being pulled into the other stuff that you're just like, I don't have the patience for, which I don't think a lot of college coaches don't have. But what do you think? What are you getting the sense? Are we going to see some prize names like bounce in the next couple of years, or they're like, it's just too much and I can't take this kind of churn? Or do you think by and large they're okay with where things are and that their desire to win and be competitive and to compete at this level will keep them figuring it out and keep churning along?
It's a great question. I think they're all waiting to see if either Congress or the NCAA acts to curb what they see as I don't know if lawlessness is the right word, but there are no guardrails right now. That's a polite way of saying it. And I think head coaches are frustrated that the marketplace has become as market driven. Recruiting has become as market driven as it has become. I think they're frustrated that there are still no windows in the transfer portal. I think those are going to come pretty soon. They're in the pipeline, but that has made recruiting even more of it's made the retail part of recruiting a 24/7, 365 thing.
Do you suspect, because this was
there's a lot out there
that
needs to be fixed, and they right now are waiting for it to be fixed and hope it will be fixed. And the longer it goes without being fixed, I think we may see, I guess you're referring to football Jay Wrights, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Chris Peterson was kind of like that, but
yeah,
I imagine there might be a couple of more.
that's what I'm just wondering. Like, what if Kirby's like, I got my ring young, like I did the grind at Alabama for so many years, and look, the money's a lot, but I think he's got young kids that I wonder if some of these coaches are like, I can always come back. Like, is the other thing where you kind of do the Sean McVay thing in the NFL, where there was retirement rumors after he won immediately in Los Angeles, and you're like, if you're Sean McVay, you came in as the youngest coach at the time when you came in. It's not like the NFL is going to forget about you. If you're Sean Payton, it's not like the NFL is just going to forget about your existence. If you need to recharge and leave and just be like, this is just too much, I think that door will always be open for a lot of the best of the best to leave and then come back. Like Jay Wright, if he wants to come back ever, or be an NBA coach, whatever, I think he has those opportunities. But I think that's probably not the case for a lot of the other coaches. So they can't really dip out if you're a Mike Loxley or a Kirk Ferentz. I don't think anyone's hiring Kirk Ferentz at this point to jumpstart their program. I think this is it if you're Iowa. I mean, I guess maybe Nebraska or somebody like that.
Kirk's
or like
older,
yeah.
Kirk is he 70 yet? He's close to 70, but
Right. I think he's the longest tenured FBS coach, right?
Yeah, you're right. He is. Bob Stoops was interesting in that he quit so he could watch his kids play college football, and he certainly has had opportunities to come back. And I think there are, he said, I think there are a handful of schools that would turn his head, but for whatever reason, that hasn't happened. But how many guys have there been like that? And you bring up Kirby's name. Kirby strikes me as a guy that's not going anywhere. He's too eaten up with it, in that Saban way. I mean, he is so far the most Saban-like of Saban's assistants, in terms of his organization and in terms of doing things like Nick did with the same level or a similar level of success. And I guess Kirby could leave, sure, but he's at his alma mater. He's at his wife's alma mater. She was a better athlete at Georgia than he was. They're raising their kids where they want to raise them. His parents are nearby. In terms of, I guess if he wanted to get out of the grind, he would, but I just don't sense that.
Do you get the sense the one-time waiver is going away and that we're eventually going to have players being able to transfer as many times as they want sooner rather than later?
For very easily. So if they had the numbers to show it would be deleterious to getting a degree, then maybe they could, show that as a good reason not to allow it. The fascinating thing about all this to me, Chase, is with the portal and with NIL is we are giving kids rights they've never had, but with those rights come responsibilities, and those are adult responsibilities we're giving to 18 to 21-year-olds. And speaking of Chris Peterson, one of my 5 favorite coaching quotes ever, he said to writers one day, talking about a player he suspended, he says, you and I, we all get it. Every year we get a year older. They're always 19 and stupid. So which is true. I mean, and, kids are not going to make great decisions with these rights. And I guess that's just, I guess that's not enough of a reason not to give them their rights. But it's just, to me, it's a real red flag to say, let's be very careful in how we proceed, especially with getting a degree is the goal.
It's one of those things too that I think you can be pro player and you can also just say that, like, okay, well, this is worse for the sport as a entertainment model. Like, it's okay to say this is worse for the casual fan. Like, I think it's almost impossible for the casual college football fan to keep up with the sport like they used to. And that's a detriment. And that's not the player's fault. Like, they're bouncing around and they're trying to get to the next level and they're trying to find that right spot. But there is a fallout from that. And there is some pushback where they're like, well, it's pro player. But it's like, well, no, there are some fallout here. Like, I think attendance will continue to go down. I think you're going to see some more issues where the fans that Phil Steele's annual is not going to save you as a casual college football fan. You're going to need more than that.
Weekly. Yeah.
Yeah. You need a weekly version, basically. Yeah. And there are going to be Georgia fans that are in the bins and they're like, is that Bo Nix? Is that Bo Nix under center for Oregon? And it's just not the same. And I think part of the appeal of college football over the NFL for a lot of folks too was just, I mean, the regional aspect that we're losing more and more each year. But I think it's the fact that they got to watch their guy grow and they get to see a guy who may have been suspended as a freshman or gone through some stuff and was in the doghouse at the university for a little bit. And then he fought through it. And now he's like an All-American type player. Like, fans latch on to stories like that, and they love being able to say, like, what a career he had. I can't believe he was here at one point and now he's here, and what amazing. Or the flip side, like, there is something to be said where guys like fans love just investing in these kids. And I think that's something that's missed when they're like, oh, you don't like player because you want them to stay. It's like, no, I think a lot of folks just want to latch on to these players for this limited amount of time, and they will back them 100%. And they will look at it as like, I get to enjoy this wild ride. And the only just look at high school football right now. Like, that's the thing. I still go all the time and cover it, is just, you see that year over year. They're like, you should have seen him as a freshman, and watching him grow up and get bigger and better each and every year. That's a really cool thing for folks. And I think that is something that's lost in the pro player conversation.
Well, one and done really hurt college hoop.
Mm.
And if you think about it, when Virginia won the national championship a couple of years ago, they did it with veteran players, and everybody went, "Oh my God, yeah, this is what college
North Carolina this year."
Like, so but as the conversation I had with Kirby Smart this year, he said, if a kid leaves, it used to be if he figured out on this roster that he wasn't good enough to make the NFL, he would, get used to that idea, and he would pursue his degree. And, he would go from here into the Alumni Network. He would get a job, and he'd be a Georgia man the rest of his life. He said now if he figures out he's not going to be an NFL player because of what happens here, he goes somewhere else. He's still not going to be an NFL player, A, and B, he's no longer in this network. He said, these alumni are not going to take care of him. Is the other school going to take care of him? He was only there a year, maybe two. So it's deleterious. That's my word of the day. As long as we
like it
about all this, it's hurting the sport. It's hurting the product, but I don't know what you do about it.
That's the thing, is like, we're not, this is where it's going, and the players are right. But like, two things can be true. There's so much more nuance that is needed in these conversations, that this is why, and reason number 73, that Twitter was a mistake for our society, is just these little things that you and I can discuss, but people get really emotional or get up in arms about this kind of thing. And it's
easy to scream and shout when you're not in the same room with somebody. That's always the issue with social media, and that's made political discourse awful. It's made sports bar talk awful. It's made everything awful. But
I love the point though about the Alumni Network that I think is another part of it. It's just, I'm here in Knoxville. There are so many guys. Jason Swain has a radio show here in Knoxville, and you look at this, like, he was not going to be an NFL lifer, and he could have gone on to UAB or somewhere else and put up better numbers and finished out there. But he is known and beloved in Knoxville and has this whole career post Tennessee football that would not have been the case, I think, in today's era. And that's a really good point. And I wonder if this is just more on the universities themselves to push this and be like, hey, these are the kind of things that you might not be an NFL player or whatever, but there is real value in staying at these. There's a reason that the enrollment at this school is as big as it is because it's great having this alumni base, and it's great to come back to this place and just be universally beloved and have all of these alumni and a lot of powerful alumni be in your corner to back you in a lot of ways that you can't see because you're 20 and 19. Like, you won't appreciate this now, but you'll appreciate it a decade from now.
The whole argument Stanford makes when it recruits, and other schools do it, but Stanford says it's not a 4-year decision, it's a 40-year decision. And I think that gets back to what we were talking about with rights and responsibilities. Can an 18 or 19-year-old kid, 20-year-old kid look at that and watch his boyhood dream waft away and make a mature decision and let it go? It's hard to do, and especially when you got people whispering in your ear or into your social media account that, hey, you can come here and we'll get you to the league. So it's a tough decision for kids to have to make.
And the last thing too, and we'll move on, is just that, like, I think there's this misnomer for kids now, like the Jordan Addison from Pitt to USC, where I wonder if there's a way to present this to kids of just like the NFL draft. Look at where all these Terrell Owens went to University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. Antonio Brown went to Central Michigan. If you are an NFL talent, they will find you. I promise you, they will find you. Like, you just put up the numbers at Pitt. You don't need to go to USC to be seen. Like, the video is everywhere. If you are in a good system and you're putting up great numbers and you're evolving and you love this coaching staff, you don't have to leave. Like, that is what scares me maybe the most, is that those are really cool stories for those universities. And it's really cool to see them pop in the draft. We're like, man, how did this guy end up here?
Yeah.
And then you just like Terrell Owens is still
Yeah,
a
look at
legend
the
in Czech.
Senior Bowl rosters every year.
Yeah.
They find them, and
Mhm.
then so you're right. This whole issue could decimate Group of Five leagues. It could decimate the FCS. But
I mean, if you talk to FCS coaches now, I mean, they'll tell you like it's just like there's a developmental league part of it now where they understand like your mindset has had to change if you are an FCS coach right now. Like it just has to be different.
yeah, no, it's a great point, and we're all in a huge state of reinventing the sport, and
Mhm.
there's no guarantee that whatever is reinvented will be as good as what we had.
Mhm.
uh, change is eternal, and we just have to hope that what has drawn all of us to college football for all of our lifetimes
Mhm.
will continue to be the lure that it has been for so long.
My gut tells me because you see this a lot. There's a good Twitter account after bashing Twitter. I should do a positive. That's like things that have been reinvented essentially in the new world where it's something that was already a thing and they just found a new way of saying it or reinventing this particular product or this particular thing. It's like, oh, this new age thing. It's like, well, that existed 40 years ago. It's just called something else.
Yeah,
We're like, oh, we're getting out. You look at cable and you're like, oh, we cut the cord and we're saving money. It's like, well, now that we've added up all the different apps and all the different ways, you're like, we're right back to where we started. We just made it more complicated. I think
absolutely.
that's where conferences go. Like my gut tells me, I think we're going to be down to those two, the Big Ten and the SEC. But I think we're going to have divisions. Like the Pac-12 is just going to have its own division in the Big Ten or something, and we'll have like the ACC division in the SEC where we're going to reinvent basically where people are freaking out about it. I'm like, I think the scheduling and it's going to be a lot of the same alignments because these universities are going to figure out quite quickly. Like USC and UCLA are not the only teams moving into the Big Ten. They're not doing that to those kids that travel back and forth, and that's just not happening. Just not happening. And once that becomes clear, you're like, wait, did they just reinvent the Pac-12 and just put a subsidiary Pac-12 in the Big Ten, and there's a
Yeah,
subsidiary
exactly.
ACC?
The Big
So
Ten,
yeah,
very West. Yeah,
exactly. There's
yeah,
going to be the Big Ten West, the very West, the Big Ten Central, the Big Ten Southwest, and
yeah.
whatever. Like that's my guess of where it goes. What do you think ultimately happens?
That's a great point. The question will be, can those schools maintain their stature financially and athletically while we wait for that to happen? Because
Mm-hmm.
once they drop to a lesser level, will the appeal to do that still be there, or will we just end up with the SEC on ESPN, the Big Ten on Fox, NBC, and CBS, and everybody else is now in the FBS too,
Mm-hmm.
whatever we call that, FDS, since we already have an FCS. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I don't know. It's fascinating to watch, and it's a little bit entertaining, but because there's this big unknown looming out there, it's also really nerve-wracking if you love college football, as we all do.
I think the most nerve-wracking part though is that there are no guardrails, like you said, and that every day you could wake up and you're like, I think college football fans are just so tense. So like today when it comes out that like the 12-team playoff might be coming as early as 2024 now, and people are like, oh wait, I thought we were done with that conversation for a while. I thought that was tabled for a couple of years, and then it's like right back into the middle of the conversation, and we're like, it's so exhausting to cover this sport. And I can only imagine from your perspective where you're like, oh, we're back into this. We have to have this conversation again. Okay, let's go.
Well, a year ago, we were all talking about the alliance. You remember
Yes.
that? Yeah. So who knows? I mean, it's you just people wonder how we can be as journalists sometimes so cynical or skeptical, and this is kind of why.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think it ultimately goes to 12? Is that where they land on
I
for a
hope it
while?
does. Yeah, I think it will. I think it makes sense. I think it will be healthier for all the reasons that Sankey's committee a year ago said it would. It was those reasons all made perfect sense to me. It will keep more schools and more fan bases engaged later into the season, and
Mm-hmm.
I think that reason makes perfect sense. And, we might get an upset or two out of it, I think, which would only help the appeal of the playoff. And I think it would be fun. So let's do it.
There you go. Ivan, give me your surprise team in the SEC East this year that you think will be better than people expect, and your surprise team in the SEC West that you think will be better than people expect.
Well, a month ago I would have said Tennessee, but that's kind of become a trendy pick.
I don't like it. Ivan, I need you to, as the czar of college football media, I need you to step in here because it's a little much, and I'm already tense enough going in tomorrow with Ball State. Like, let me get through September. Can we beat Pitt? Can we beat Florida for the first time in so many years? Like,
well, the other pick is Florida. Is that Napier? That they've got more talent than people realize. Because the second half of last season was so miserable, but the talent is talent, and Napier's a good coach. And if they beat Utah Saturday, then they will convince me. I think Utah is good enough to make the playoff, and I expect Utah to win Saturday. But I have been wrong before.
People keep putting Utah, and I look at it, I'm like, they still have to sweep basically Florida, USC, Oregon, and then one of those last two twice, because I don't know if they can get in an 11-1. And I look at it, people want to put Utah in it. I love Utah. Kyle Whittingham, one of my favorite coaches, won it at Tennessee multiple times during his coaching searches.
I'm not worried about USC, really. I don't think USC's weakness this year is going to be at the line of scrimmage, and that's where Utah is the strongest. So going to Oregon for the next to last game of the regular season, that could be an issue, but I still think Utah's got better talent, and as they showed twice last year when they demolished them. So I think they're pretty good, and I think they're going to be pretty hungry based on what they left undone at the Rose Bowl.
I'm mad at myself for just what I've put in my playoff, and I've already locked it in. Ivan, I don't know if you did your 4, but I did 1 Alabama, 2 Ohio State, 3 A&M, 4 Clemson, and then a A&M Alabama final and that would be from an entertainment standpoint of Jimbo versus Saban in the national championship is the thing that we did not know America actually needed. And I think it's just put up or shut up time for A&M. At some point you got to go all in and put your chips in, where there's just so much talent on both sides of the ball now that if it's not this year, if it's not next year for Jimbo, I just don't know how much more talent you need to not win and get to the playoff. I don't understand. Like, it's now time for Jimbo, right?
Well, I still think they're a year away. I think because this great recruiting class, being number one in recruiting was just, these are freshmen. I agree that. And this is not exactly a news break, breaking news. I mean, that A&M fans talk bigger than what A&M actually does. I mean, that's been the case since time immemorial. But Jimbo, they talk like they haven't won a conference championship since 1998.
Yeah.
So that's a problem, and I don't think they are playoff ready. You have to believe Alabama is going to be ready to play them in Tuscaloosa on October 8th, and if that's the case and Alabama wins, then Alabama would have to lose twice somewhere. Your formula of the second team in the division, that works and that's possible. I don't know. Utah was my 4th, Georgia was my 3rd. So, and
then Ohio State and Bama.
Yeah. I just picked Georgia because they know how to do it. And I picked Utah because I just figured they're going to be very good and very hungry.
True or false? Mark Stoops is the head coach at the University of Kentucky this time next year.
True.
Okay.
Where do you think he's going?
I just think it's so weird with the Calipari stuff. Like, we never see public feuds like that between your two your two revenue sports. And that if he feels that disrespected by what Cal said and the basketball school stuff, that when you see the videos, there was like immediately after that, there was a like all these different sororities around the SEC. I don't know if you saw those, did those like videos, like prep rallies, and you look at Kentucky's and there were only basketball jerseys. All the kids were only wearing basketball jerseys. And I just look at it, I'm like, he took this so personally, and going to Twitter and retweeting a lot of stuff about, hey, like, we're more than that. Like, we win 10 games multiple times in a row. Like, that's not our history. But it's like, there is a reason Bear Bryant left when he did, as you well know. There's a reason that Kentucky has been where they've been. There's a reason that Tennessee can just walk right into Kentucky and take Christian Conyer. And there's just, I think he's too great of a coach that, like, if FSU opens this offseason, if Auburn opens, if there's a school where there's no question we're football first, I don't know. I think it's a possibility because of how weird that relationship is now between him and Cal.
That's an interesting supposition. I would say that if he goes anywhere, he would just move to the Big Ten. You know, his recruiting strength is in Ohio. That's where he's from.
Yeah.
Kentucky has gotten to this level in the SEC because of his ability to recruit, you know, within a driving radius of.
Sorry, you froze there for a second. Yeah, sorry about that, Ivan. Well, we'll see what ultimately. I think it's fascinating. I think it's a subplot to definitely keep an eye on as we head into this fall football season. Because a lot of expectations at Kentucky. A lot of folks, there were people putting them winning the SEC East this year, and a lot of hype on Will Levis. And we'll see with Kentucky, but I will say it was kind of hilarious today. I don't know if you saw, like, who said, I didn't say suspensions, like right before he said multiple game suspensions, and you're like, what is happening at the University of Kentucky right now? My last question for you, Ivan, what storyline in college football has you most fascinated? What have you just found yourself thinking about the most when it comes to college football right now?
Well, I mean, we've talked about the, you know, big picture we've talked about. I think pertaining to 2022, there are a lot of schools that I'm curious about with new coaches. You know, we sort of brushed alongside. We brushed up on USC. I'm skeptical that'll happen this year. You know, how does Brent Venables do at OU, and how does Clemson do with two new coordinators when he promotes from within? I mean, you know, that to me is really interesting. What happens with Brian Kelly? He's usually pretty good. He usually turns it around fairly quickly. I went back and looked. You know, he I think 4 of his 5 first year gigs he improved upon the previous year. So, you know, just kind of paying attention to the new, you know, it was such a spectacular offseason of coaching hires, big names, big schools, and I'm curious how those guys do.
I share that sentiment. Like, LSU's coming. The last 3 LSU head coaches have won national titles, and I don't see that being any different for Brian Kelly. It's such a weird job because it seems like it's almost impossible to keep it sustainable and it not get crazy, but it's also really hard not to win with that talent base in that area and that just fan and booster involvement and everything else. That's just one of the 5 best jobs in college football. Maybe just not one of the 5 best jobs for one's health over a 10-year span.
One's employment health, no.
Yes, exactly. Ivan, this has been a pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time. What can the good folks check out from you with On3, your columns that you do fairly often during the week that I very much love reading? What can the good folks check out from you on that front? You got some books as well?
Well, yeah, I you know, every day during the season, I do 400 words of notes each weekday. So those post first thing in the morning. I've got a story posting tomorrow. Can I say tomorrow? Posting on September.
It will come out the day of. Yes.
Okay. So pretend I didn't say tomorrow. Coming out today. on Bryce Young and his maturation as a leader. And my book. I'm looking around to see if I've got a copy within reach. Sadly, I do not. I keep trying to catch his eye.
Mm-hmm.
That was about our son Max and about grief, and the paperback edition comes out later this month at the end of September. So I'm very much looking forward to that, and I'll be out speaking about it throughout the Southeast over the course of the season.
Awesome. Well, Ivan, good luck this season. This is going to be a lot of fun. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos along the way, but this is going to feel as normal as it's felt for a college football season in a while. And it's going to be a lot of fun. And I love that you're still writing and doing the columns that I love reading, that dating back to your ESPN.com days. So, Ivan, don't be a stranger, my friend, and we'll have to reconnect again very soon.
Anytime, Chase. Thanks a lot.